We have 120,000 millionaires who live in the city of Chicago who can pay the fair share, and there are solutions so that we can do both. Care for new neighbors as well as the current neighbors.
$15,000 in food stamps and $5,000 cash money. Every month they're getting that. Yes, and they're getting 6 months free rent. So the Venezuelan migrants that are coming in here, they are getting 6 months free rent, $15,000 in food stamps, and on the credit card, $5,000.
Are y'all lying to us? Because, see, we know that the budget stated that you guys spent $400 million on the migrants who are illegal immigrants last year.
The migrant crisis will be the downfall of Chicago. How can a city dealing with crime, a massive budget deficit, and an overwhelming public service manage this situation? The city's budget is already crumbling, yet Chicago's mayor, Brian Johnson, wants to spend $30,000 on hair and makeup, while critical problems are ignored.
Oh, girl, you think I look good?
Why isn't the money being used to fix the real issues with the real residents in Chicago? If this continues, Chicago won't even stand a chance. But let's get into it. Just like other parts of the country, especially here in New York City, in Chicago, they had to deal with their flood of migrants. At first, a few hundred arrived, but then thousands with no signs of stopping. In theory, helping those in need sound like a noble goal. And many people believe, like Chicago, as a sanctuary city, should be a safe haven. But in reality, the city wasn't prepared for this. Very similar to New York. It's like you're trying to host a banquet, you're trying to host a party, but you barely have enough food for your own family. No matter how well-intentioned, eventually everyone starts going hungry. This is what Mayor Johnson said about 11 months ago.
Anticipating the influx of migrants will only get worse. Mayor Brandon Johnson's administration expects the city to face a $538 million budget shortfall. A third of that, $200 million, is to pay for new arrivals.
Let's see what they're saying now as of September 2024.
Chicago City Council members are facing a difficult challenge: how to fill a nearly $1 billion budget deficit. You know, aldermen got into a heated debate here on Fox 32 over the amount of money that the city has spent on the migrant situation, $300 million at least so far. Could that money have been used to fill this budget gap?
So I think there's two things to just be really clear with your audience about. You know, the city's portion of that amount is actually rather small.
I don't believe you.
Though we have budgeted for a certain amount this year, there's a lot of funding that we've received from the county, from the state, and the federal government to support that work. So while we are really transparent about how much has been spent, that's not all city dollars.
Right?
Liar.
The numbers kept growing, and the resources that once was stretched thin are now at their breaking point. Shelters are overcrowded, schools are overrun, and public services are on a verge of collapse. Chicago, already struggling with its own issues, now face a new crisis that has amplified every problem it already had. I mean, they call Chicago the Windy City, and a lot of wind is just making this massive, massive balloon. It's filled with more and more air, and the migrant crisis is just pushing this balloon to its limit.
We are taxpayers, we're property owners. Our money should go towards fixing our communities.
We have no more room. Y'all are embarrassing Chicago as a whole.
Mayor Johnson, the black aldermen, the black alderwomen in this city, you will stand for the black citizens of Chicago.
You already have to deal with the issues of crime, unemployment, and the failing infrastructure. So this is just getting into a really terrible situation right now.
Emotional outbursts, at times so heated, police had to step in. We're talking about City Council today and a vote to spend $51 million on helping migrants here in Chicago.
Surface.
As black people who have been hurt continuously by the city and country it loves, it ain't our responsibility to take care of everybody else.
And anger.
We don't want to have to recall anybody. We don't want to have to protest anybody, but we are not going to be ignored, Brandon. Mayor Johnson.
Many in Chicago's black community and the city council speaking out against spending $51 million to house migrants, asking when will the help for them finally become a reality.
And it cannot be put on the backs of the residents of Chicago without showing them that they're getting something out of this.
That's the reality on the ground in Chicago. Chicago's public schools, which were already underfunded and overpopulated, now have to accommodate hundreds and sometimes thousands of new students. Class sizes are ballooning, teachers are overwhelmed, and children, both migrant and lifelong residents, are suffering the consequences. Hospitals, too, are feeling the strain. With the influx of new patients and limited resources, medical professionals are being asked to do more with less. It's like trying to feed 100 people with a loaf of bread and a single fish. Everyone leaves hungry, and no one gets what they truly need. Chicago Mayor Brian Johnson is under fire for spending over $30,000 of campaign funds on personal grooming, hair and makeup over a course of a year. As I said in my last video talking about the situation, I look at him, I don't get it. I just don't get it. This spending, which he defended as supporting Black-owned businesses, has sparked significant criticism because he's full of crap, especially given the city's ongoing struggle with crime and resource management. Critics argue that while the mayor spends lavishly on his appearance, people in Chicago continue to grapple with the high crime rate and all the other problems. There's a lack of meaningful improvements in safety. Chicago's murder and violent crime rates continue to be a point of contention, with residents questioning why more resources aren't being directed towards fixing the city's broken safety system. While the mayor spends thousands of dollars on appearances, families are dealing with the daily fears of violence on the streets. It raises the question, where are the city's priorities? So as this migrant crisis intensifies, the city becomes more divided. The residents, the people who lived there their entire lives, who lived in Chicago for decades, are frustrated. They're watching the communities transform in ways they never imagined. Longtime residents feel like their voices are being drowned out, their needs overlooked. It's like being in a house where one guest has overstayed their welcome, but every time you try to address the problem, another guest arrives.
Are y'all lying to us? Because, see, we know that the budget stated that you guys spent $400 million on the migrants who are illegal immigrants last year. The city is currently in a $235 million deficit, which means that you guys overspent the budget to pay for people who have not paid any taxes.
The frustration has turned into anger, with neighborhoods becoming battlegrounds for resources, jobs, and services. The promise of a thriving, diverse city is fading, replaced by growing tensions. Everyone's fighting for the same thing: survival. And in that kind of environment, it's easy for conflicts to escalate. The financial toll is staggering. While politicians argue about the moral responsibility to care for migrants, taxpayers are left footing the bill. Every dollar spent on this crisis is a dollar taken away from fixing the issues that plague Chicago: potholes, fixing the public school system, or fighting crime.
Pointing over soaring property tax bills in the suburbs.
Tia Ewing's been tracking this story from the very beginning.
I said, well, how come the first installment I got the exemption, and this one, I don't have it. And she told me, we don't have a record of you ever filing the form, which I filed every year.
John Tennyson is a Vietnam vet declared 100% disabled by the VA. He showed me his previous tax bill for his home on Lunt Avenue in Chicago.
I just want to highlight on this paper, you can see the row of zeros under 2022.
Now it's over $6,200, and he's pleading for help. Tennyson isn't the only one.
So my taxes are every 3 months, $3,402.86, and I live in Steger, Illinois.
My taxes are $10,500, and I live in Flossmoor, Illinois.
And our taxes are $10,182, and I live in Orland Park.
My taxes is $11,029.41.
When you look at a city, a government, it's like a machine. Chicago is a pretty old and overworked machine. Every piece of this system is connected, and when one part breaks, it affects everything else. Now with the migrant crisis, the whole machine is grinding to a halt. The promise of new jobs, improved infrastructure, and a more prosperous city that the mayor proposed when he first got elected, they're not materializing. Instead, as the crime is rising, the residents are feeling neglected and pissed off, and the tension between longtime Chicagoans and the new arrivals continues to grow. The dream of a sanctuary city is turning into a nightmare. While many people were promised by the influx of migrants that it would enrich our culture and bring diversity and makes everyone stronger, you're seeing a lot that's the complete opposite. The city is more divided, more overburdened, and more fragile than ever before. The migrant crisis isn't just about people coming in Chicago or New York or other places across this country seeking a better life. It's about a city being forced to do more than it can handle. The idea that welcoming migrants sounds good on paper, but in practice, it turned into a problem too big to ignore. The people in Chicago are being asked to solve a national problem on a local level, and it's pushing people to the brink. But what do you guys think about this story? Let me know in the comments below. Are you dealing with any migrant crisis where you live? Let me know. Thank you for taking time to watch this video, and I'll see you guys in the next video.